Hello, this is Volodymyr Tymoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the main topic. Yes, the Russians have concentrated about 11,000 soldiers to encircle the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Some of the occupiers want to advance to the north and northwest of the city, but Ukrainian defenders are holding their positions. This was reported by the 7th Airborne Assault Corps. What is happening in Pokrovsk now? A special TSN correspondent will tell and show you more details. Yuliya, Kirienko.
Tier, if you have a coil. Thank you, God.
This is how Russian drones hunt even civilian cars in the Donetsk region. This is the entrance to Kostiantynivka, once a city of thousands, now just scorched earth. On the highway, a car is still burning, hit by an enemy drone, and another car speeds past it. The soldiers are rushing to their positions and have just entered the city when another drone flies at them.
Wait, maybe they need help. They're alive.
A little further from the frontline cities, the roads are draped with long corridors of netting. Now, almost all the roads in Donbas look like this. Every day, these tunnels get longer and longer. In some places, the occupiers have increased the number of drones for the 10th time. They attack moving vehicles, search for the positions of our equipment, and set up ambushes right on the roads, even against infantry. They force people to leave their homes and disrupt logistics for our troops, cutting off all routes between the frontline trenches and the rear. In the forest belt hidden among the trees, paratroopers are concealing an American APC. I'm inside an American Striker APC. The guys from the 82nd Brigade consider this vehicle the coolest they've ever worked with. It's all because of its strong armor and maneuverability. This vehicle saved dozens of people in the Kursk region. It was this one that broke into the counterattack near Dobropilya. Back then, when the Russians hadn't yet managed to bring in so many of their strike drones. This vehicle repeatedly carried infantry into assaults, and it was always successful.
We were advancing in a convoy, got hit, and then drones targeted us. An anti-tank guided missile hit us, punctured 4 wheels, but out of 8, we drove away on 4.
It can carry up to 6 soldiers and safely deliver them to the drop-off point.
A 12.7 caliber machine gun, very precise. The armor is very, very good. It's excellently protected.
The powerful chassis allows it to handle any off-road conditions of war.
The vehicle is maneuverable, fast, and good.
But this vehicle has already been here for a month. It's just hiding in the bushes because with the current invasion of Russian drones, which are now present on the Dobropilya-Pokrovsk direction, its use is really only for a single time.
As of today,
the enemy does not allow us to use this equipment. That's why we're forced to do it on quad bikes and buggies.
Or even cover dozens of kilometers on foot, like in this video here, which was published by the 25th Airborne Brigade. These are our pilots who, after a firefight in Pokrovsk, are trying to pull out a wounded comrade and are moving under constant fire. If near Dobropilya, our defense forces are having some success, and they even liberated the village of Suketske, but in Pokrovsk, the occupiers have brought in significant reinforcements. And Russian infantry have already been spotted deep within residential neighborhoods in the southwest near the railway. Our drones recorded the tricolor flag over the remains of Pokrovsk. Eventually it was shot down, but this means that the road to Myrnohrad is now at risk of being blocked, and there is an entire cluster of defense forces there. It is becoming increasingly difficult for our infantry to hold their positions in the trenches near the village of Lysivka. A similar situation is unfolding in the village of Novoekonomikne, which is near Myrnohrad. Supplying food and ammunition to our soldiers, even with drones, is already bordering on the impossible, say the defense forces. And they are looking for ways how to unblock their own.
Meanwhile, nuclear threats are once again coming from the Kremlin. In response to the most severe sanctions from the US, Putin is brandishing his nuclear burevestniks and Poseidons while simultaneously conducting drills. And by the way, the ALCO president of the Russian Federation, Medvedev, called Poseidon a doomsday weapon and at the same time threatened Belgium with a nuclear strike. But is that very burevestnik really as terrifying and effective as Putin and his cronies make it out to be? Experts say that there are already a lot of questions piling up about the new Wunderwaffe of the bunker dweller. What exactly are they? We'll show you now.
The Kremlin has once again boasted about its super weapon, another one with no analogs for intimidation and propaganda.
There's not enough gasoline, factories are burning, the country is running out of money. It's a complete mess and so on, yet they keep trying to test some kind of superweapon, their next so-called Wunderwaffe. This time,
they brought out the nuclear missile Burevestnik into the spotlight, and Putin did it personally. He said that supposedly they had tested this nuclear cruise missile. Naturally, it was a success.
After all, it's a unique product that no one else in the world has. Moreover, I remember very well when we announced that we were developing such a weapon.
Back then, at that time in my life, even the most respected, top-level and highly qualified specialists, individuals who had spent many years developing their expertise and earning recognition in their fields, told me, after giving it careful and thoughtful consideration, that yes, it is indeed a good and worthy goal, but in the foreseeable historical future, it's unachievable. And now, here are the decisive tests completed.
The Burevestnik tests themselves supposedly took place on October 21st, reported Gerasimov. The results were meant to inspire fear.
During the missile's flight, all assigned vertical and horizontal maneuvers were carried out, thereby demonstrating its high capability to bypass missile defense and air defense systems.
How many thousand kilometers?
14,000.
14,000. And it stayed in the air?
Well, about 15 hours. And that's not the limit.
Obviously, this is how the terrorist state is responding to the sanctions imposed by the United States. And it would sound threatening if not for one nuance. It's the Russians themselves who should be afraid. The Burevestnik is by no means a new missile. Its development began in Russia back in 2001. However, it was only in 2018 that Putin publicly announced it. At that time, he claimed that the Burevestnik's range was unlimited and its flight path could be unpredictable. It would be worth clarifying what the consequences of its launch are. After all, it's not for nothing. In the US, the Burevestnik was nicknamed the Flying Chernobyl.
The missile is dangerous because if its reactor is destroyed, if it is shot down, or if it crashes or has an accident, a large area will be contaminated. A fairly large area, in fact. And no sane person wants that. That's why the Americans abandoned this environmentally unfriendly project back then.
The Kremlin doesn't care about the consequences, so the development continued and eventually a disaster did happen.
remember there was an explosion in Nyonoksa, some kind of nuclear, unclear, not exactly nuclear, but some strange explosion, after which radiation levels in Severodvinsk suddenly spiked. They say that their Burevestnik missile exploded.
This incident happened in 2019. It was then that the tests ended in a radioactive disaster. Employees of Rosatom and the Ministry of Defense were killed. However, this is by no means the first such case for sure. Nor will it be the last time that nuclear missile tests go far off plan. Just recently, in September of last year, another so-called unparalleled missile had a similar incident. The Sarmat exploded during launch in its silo. Satellite images at the time showed severe damage to the launch complex at the silo site. A huge crater. Returning to the Burevestnik, up until now, there have been reports of 13 missile tests. Of those, only one is considered successful. On that occasion, the missile flew 35 kilometers and the longest Burevestnik flight lasted only 2 minutes. That was precisely when it covered those same 35 kilometers. At the same time, the Kremlin, of course, never missed a chance to boast about successful tests without any evidence. Putin himself claimed a successful Burevestnik flight, and in October of 2023, all of this, of course, was accompanied solely by words.
And even if we assume, I'm not going to get into any special details or anything like that right now, that they actually managed to do it, even if we suppose they succeeded with a single unit, maybe two, it's something like the Oreshnik, which hardly anyone has actually seen yet, right? So even if they managed to make just one such missile, what's the point of it?
Trump reacted instantly to the announcement about the Burevestnik exercises and was not impressed by the nuclear club. On the contrary, he reminded everyone that there is a nuclear submarine off the Russian coast. And he called on Putin to focus on ending the war he started against Ukraine, rather than on missile tests.
I don't think what Putin is saying is appropriate. He should put an end to the war, a war that was supposed to last 1 week but is now in its 4th year. That's what he should be doing instead of testing missiles.
But the Kremlin has no plans to stop its nuclear games. On the contrary, they're even threatening that the missile will soon be adopted by the Russian army. Putin has ordered preparations for this missile. It is expected that this could happen in 2 years, that is in 2027. But is there actually anything to deploy?
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
And now let's move to the Kupyansk direction of the front. The enemy is becoming more ferocious here as well. In the Kupyansk direction, Ukrainian soldiers have repelled 4 attacks by the occupiers and 3 more clashes are still ongoing. At the same time, the enemy is trying to break through in the areas of Stepova, Novoselki, and towards Pishchanovo and Petropavlivka. Furthermore, Ukraine does not recommend that journalists trust the so-called permission from the Russian dictator Putin to visit Pokrovsk and Kupyansk. Moscow has already broken its own promises during the fighting for Ilovaisk. And now our journalists have prepared an objective picture of what is happening in Kupyansk at this very moment, especially for you. Let's watch.
The battles for control over the city of Kupyansk, a major transportation hub in the Kharkiv region, are ongoing.
The situation in Kupyansk remains difficult, but these days there is more control on our side. We continue to defend our positions.
Against this backdrop, Russian propaganda has once again released another batch of fake news. The bunker dweller claimed that Ukrainian troops in Kupyansk are not surrounded or blocked. In
the city of Kupyansk and the city of Krasnoarmysk, the enemy has ended up blocked and surrounded. By the way, I discussed this issue with the commanders of the respective groups. They do not mind, Andrei Ivanovich, they truly do not mind. If representatives of the media, including both foreign journalists and Ukrainian journalists, are permitted to enter the enemy's encircled zones so that they can go in and see with their own eyes exactly what is happening there and observe for themselves the actual condition of the Ukrainian troops who are surrounded. This would allow the political leadership of Ukraine to make the most appropriate and well-informed decisions regarding the fate and well-being of its citizens and its servicemen.
But these statements have nothing to do with reality. This is the painfully familiar old Kremlin tactic. Media blackmail and an attempt to demoralize Ukrainian society.
As of today, I believe the situation has been stabilized. I hope that our security and defense forces will be able to do everything to ensure that Kupyansk is not captured by the enemy. In
reality, this is not an encirclement, but rather heavy local fighting.
The main direction of the occupiers' attack is not Kupyansk itself, but Kupyansk-Vuslovyi. The occupiers' plans include the possibility of establishing control over this key railway station.
As of October 30th, Ukrainian forces maintain control over most of Kupyansk and key transportation hubs. Russian occupiers have entrenched themselves in small groups on the northern outskirts of the city and in the western part, creating a foothold for further attempts at an offensive.
In other words, they are trying to change their tactics and strategy of combat operations in urban environments. It is fundamentally different from the tactics employed in Bakhmut, notably 2.5 years ago, when the occupiers employed a large amount of armored vehicles and accordingly the so-called local assault tactics to establish control over this settlement.
The main threat remains the northern directions and the enemy's attempts to break through to the highway, Kharkiv, Kupyansk, Svatove. This route is vital for supplying Ukrainian units on the eastern bank of the Oskil. From the south and east, Russian forces have been unable to approach the city. The main supply route for the Ukrainian armed forces remains through the Kupyansk-Uzlovy railway station and the embankment dam across the Oskil. The dam is periodically targeted by enemy airstrikes, but it remains operational and pontoon crossings serve as backup routes.
In other words, the main goal and strategic objective of the occupiers is not to advance deeper into Kharkiv region, but rather to repeat the scenario of 2022, when the Izium grouping of the occupiers was considered one of the most combat capable and aimed to achieve the operational encirclement of Ukrainian units, specifically in the area of the Slovyansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. This is the main objective. That is, the strategic task of the occupiers is to establish full control over the territory of Donetsk region.
But the enemy has run into the tough defense of the Ukrainian armed forces. Counterattacks by Ukrainian troops are holding back the Russian advance.
At the moment, Ukraine's defense forces are conducting counter-sabotage operations to prevent the penetration of Russian occupiers further into the urban area and to prevent them from gaining direct control over the key hub of Kupyansk.
Kupyansk is not just another point on the map. It is a symbol of resilience, endurance, and military stamina. The Russian army is trying to wear the city down, but the Ukrainian defense is holding strong. And no matter how much the Kremlin tries to pass wishful thinking off as reality, the truth is on the side of those who are defending their home. And step by step, they are driving the enemy out of Ukrainian land.